Yeah, there are a bunch that qualify. Probably the most significant in my life, the most significant story I did was I spent a season with the Roxbury Community College men's basketball team, which is Division III junior college. And the previous year they'd won the Division III junior college championship. And the year that I was with them, they made it to the Final Four. And I got to know some of the guys on that team pretty well. And their coach, the guy who was coaching them, became a good friend. And that was a huge experience because at the time, the guy who was the athletic director at Roxbury Community College at that point was a guy named John Thomas, who was a high jumper, had been to the Olympics twice, representing the US as a high jumper. Got to be very good friends with the Russian high jumper Brumel. And anyway, he was the athletic director. And one day, about halfway through the series, which we were doing, he said that the president wants to see you. The president of Roxbury Community College, who was a woman whose name I can't remember. And I said, "Oh, geez, John, what's the trouble? You know, has she been listening? She doesn't like what I'm doing." And he said, I remember he said this. He said, "Hey, I'm just Mickey the Dunce. I don't know. I'm just delivering the message, man. You got to go see her." And I said, "Okay, well, whatever." So I went to see this woman, very, very, very impressive executive. And I went in and she had this sort of deadpan expression. And I thought, this isn't going to be good. You know, I've said something that really has made her angry, and she's going to say, "Don't ever come back here again," or something. And I couldn't imagine what it was, because I loved these guys that I was meeting and telling their stories and all the rest. And she said, "I just want to tell you that I've been getting phone calls and emails from people talking about how Roxbury Community College must be doing great things because they're hearing your radio stories." And she said, "It really means something to me, because mostly what I hear is how we must be not doing anything at all, or we must be doing awful things. Because after all, we're in the middle of Roxbury and we're dealing with a bunch of people who probably shouldn't be in college anyway, right?" And so that was very heartening to me that the series was having that impact. Those guys, almost all of the guys on that team, were the first person in their family to go to college. There was one guy, a guy named Kareem Horton, who was really by far the best player on the team, really spectacular player, got a D1 scholarship after he finished at Roxbury. And I was talking to him one day after practice, and I said to him, "The pressure on you as a player must be incredible, because if you play well," they were very good. They won 30 straight games that year. But I said, "If you play really well, Roxbury wins by 35 points. If you don't have such a great game, Roxbury maybe only wins by 10. And he was laughing, and he said, "No," he said, "no, there's no pressure on me on the basketball court at all." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "The pressure is that I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And I got a lot of people in my family who were saying, 'Oh, he ain't going to make it. He ain't going to make it. He'll be back home. He ain't going to make it.'" And he said, "That's where the pressure is." And all of a sudden I understood, right? It was something that was so alien to my life as a middle-class white kid, the way I grew up in a suburb where everybody was going to college. Come on, what do you do after high school? You go to college. Everybody knows that. You don't know maybe where you're going to go, but you're going to go. So I'm meeting these guys. Well, the extension of that now is 5 years on, working with all these guys who are incarcerated, who come from situations that I couldn't possibly have imagined. And who are they? They're just people. They're just fellow human beings who did in most cases something really stupid when they were 18 or 19, and they're still paying for it at the age of 35 or 45, and some of them are going to pay for it for the rest of their lives. And it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter the extent to which they have turned their entire lives around. And so, you know, I mean, that to me, that's the great opportunity to learn, is to find yourself in circumstances with people who are nothing like you, who grow up in circumstances that are nothing like yours, who have enjoyed none of the advantages that people like me take for granted. And so doing the RCC story, the Roxbury Community College story, was a big deal. Having the opportunity to interview Kareem Abdul-Jabbar a couple of times was a big deal. Spending an afternoon with Frederick Wiseman, the documentary filmmaker, after he made a boxing gym film. And we talked about the film, and then we talked about a lot of other stuff. Just to be in the presence of that man, who is an unbelievable artist and creative presence. Interviewing and spending most of a day with Joan Benoit Samuelson, the marathon first winner of the first women's marathon in the Olympics. People who became friends because of these connections. And so those were all enormous. Having an opportunity to interview Jimmy Breslin a couple of times. All kinds of people. One of the funny ones was Will Chamberlain, when he brought out the book in which he claimed to have slept with, I don't know, what was it, 20,000 women or something like that. I can't remember. And so if you've ever seen the book features a photograph of Chamberlain with this unbelievably flamboyant necktie, just crazy tie. And so I came out into the waiting area. I was told, your guest is here. I came out into the waiting area, and here's Will Chamberlain, much too big for the chair he was sitting in, with this same flamboyant tie on. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Chamberlain, that's the same tie you were wearing for the photograph on the book jacket." And he said, "Yeah, I wanted to make sure you'd recognize me." So, I mean, you know, my career, my time at VUR from 84 to 2018 just gave me all kinds of wonderful opportunities to meet all kinds of people, and happily for me, to tell all kinds of stories. And a lot of them were unexpected. People ask me a lot of times, "Oh, you know, you got to meet Roger Clemens, or you got to meet Larry Bird, or famous Boston sports." And the great stories did not come from that. And one day I was supposed to meet Roger Clemens, I think, in the Red Sox dugout, and talk to him, and he didn't show up. And I went across the field to the visitors dugout, because I got to go back to the station with something, right? And I happened to see this kid who was leaning over in front of his locker, and he was writing on something. And I thought, well, this isn't usually what you see in the locker room, the clubhouse at Fenway Park. They're usually watching videos or playing cards, or, you know, shouting at each other, whatever. And this kid very quietly writing. And so I went over to him and I said, "What are you doing? What do you got?" And introduced myself. And he had one of those little books, you know, where on one side there's sentences with a word missing, and then on the other side there are the words, and you have to pick the right word to fill in the sentence on the facing page. And he was a Latino kid, and he was trying to teach himself English. And so we worked on it for a little bit together, and we talked for a little while, and he'd only been up in the big leagues for a very short time. And I said, "Well, this is great, you know, you're making progress." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I keep working on this, so one day I might take your job."